Well, Internet, looks like we found our new favorite show. HBO's Westworld, or as I like to call it, what the fuck? Based on the 1973 science fiction film of the same name, Westworld has captured the imaginations of audience members and all of the Reddit conspiracy theorists who are really good at spoiling shows. I guess it's my fault for reading them. Westworld itself is a fictional amusement park that is based on the Old West, completely populated by synthetic androids called hosts, who are almost indistinguishable from human beings, making the whole Westworld experience a bit of a mindfuck. Now, several characters and storylines have prompted multiple fan theories and questions, mostly concerning two specific characters, the mysterious Westworld creator Arnold and the ominous Man in Black. We first learned of the character Arnold from a conversation had between Dr. Robert Ford and Bernard Lowe. Dr. Robert Ford is the creative director of Westworld, played by Anthony Hopkins, and one of the park's founders, and Bernard Lowe is the head of Westworld Programming Division and a creator of hosts. We learned that Arnold was the co-founder of Westworld, a man who was obsessed with creating artificial consciousness in his androids, which eventually drove him mad and prompted his death. Ford said that he died in the park, his search for consciousness consuming him totally. Suicide, murder, no one is exactly sure. Ford says that we called it an accident, but I knew Arnold. He was very, very careful. Ford tells Bernard that Arnold's life was marked by tragedy, similar to Bernard, whose son died, presumably drowning to death. Dr. Ford describes Arnold as a man who disliked humanity and felt more comfortable with the host that he created. Before he died, Arnold had imagined the development of consciousness as a pyramid. Memory on the bottom, then improvisation, followed by self-interest. The top of the pyramid was never established, but he had a notion of what it might be. His theory was called the bicameral mind, the idea that primitive man believed his thoughts to be the voices of gods. Arnold built a version of the androids in which they heard their programming as an inner monologue. And since the beginning of the series, we see several different androids, most noticeably Dolores, hearing voices that are influencing their behavior. And many people believe this to be the voice of Arnold.
Kathy and Walter were exhibiting other aberrancies beyond memory recall of previous builds. They were hearing voices, talking to someone.
Kill him. A simple cognitive dissonance. That's all.
I'd agree, except they were talking to the same imaginary person. Someone named Arnold.
Arnold.
In the beginning of the series, Dr. Ford updates the codes of the new androids, giving them what he calls riveries, the ability to recall certain memories and emotions. This could be the reason why specific androids are able to hear the voice of Arnold because of this programming update. As to Arnold's demise, it's possible that Ford killed Arnold because of their differing philosophies on artificial intelligence. If you look at the quote closely, Ford says that he knows Arnold was very, very careful, so it can be taken as Ford understanding how to successfully destroy his friend turned enemy, not wanting to risk an inevitable android uprising. Remember, Ford says a good fiction, like all great stories, is rooted in truth. So Ford can be covering his own tracks by telling Bernard a fictionalized version of the death of Arnold, but he is obviously withholding some information.
With due respect, sir, I'm not sure you've told me the entire truth about this situation.
Ford could also be acknowledging the fact that Arnold had some sort of contingency plan, the ability to transfer his own living conscious inside an android, possibly Bernard. Many fans have noticed the similarities between Arnold and Bernard Lowe. Bernard Lowe is actually an anagram for Arnold Weber. Ford says that a traumatic event caused Arnold to lose himself in his work. Bernard has also experienced traumatic loss, the death of his son, and has shown a great interest in the apparent self-consciousness of Dolores, the android who is on the fastest track to human consciousness and the central focus of the show. Remember, Bernard is the only character in the show who has a thorough backstory. We learn about his traumatic loss of his son, and we also see his former wife. Every good fiction is rooted in truth, and so far in the show, the only backstories we see for characters are the characters who aren't real, and Bernard Lowe. I mean, come on, look at this scene right here. Does this look like a guy talking to another human being? Or a guy talking to a robot and giving him commands?
Prevent any further voices, but you will let me know if any of the hosts display or exhibit any unusual behavior, won't you, Bernard?
Yes, of course.
Good. Oh, Bernard, just don't forget, the hosts are not real.
These details give weight to the theory that Bernard is actually a clone of Arnold, or a synthetic android operating with the living conscious of a dead Arnold. As we were told by Ford, Arnold was very, very careful, so maybe he did have a backup plan where his living conscious would be uploaded into Bernard's synthetic body, and Bernard is continuing Arnold's work as an android, unbeknownst to Ford. Or it could be that Ford uploaded Arnold's consciousness into a host, keeping his friend alive in order to always have an opposing view. The God-devil black versus white struggle keeping him honest. Bernard is obviously determined to play God by raising the consciousness of Dolores, where Ford's mysterious narrative appears to be one of terror and horror. Ford tells Bernard in the first episode, you can't play God without being acquainted with the devil. We've already seen Ford interact with an android that was a younger version of himself, so it wouldn't be out of the norm for Ford to recreate his friend as a host. When Ford and Bernard are discussing the malfunctioning android in the first episode, Ford deduces the newly implanted reveries are the cause of the malfunction. He says there's no cause for alarm, Bernard. Just our old work coming back to haunt us. Notice he uses our instead of my, implicating that Bernard is also at fault for the malfunctioning android, Peter Abernathy. Right before he shuts down completely, Abernathy says he wants to meet his maker.
Well, you're in luck. And what you want to say to your maker?
I shall have such revenges on you. Both.
Realistically, Bernard is probably not an android and is going down a similar path to Arnold, with the show trying to paint a parallel between the different arcs, in order to keep that Arnold storyline alive even though the character died 30 years ago. The Man in Black is a privileged player in Westworld who is determined to find a deeper level in the park. When we first see him in the original, he tells Dolores that he's been in the park for 30 years and is upset when Dolores doesn't recognize him. His adventures and ambitions have prompted several theories on his identity and his overall ambitions. The most intriguing theory, in my opinion, is that William is the Man in Black. William, as we know, is a newcomer to the park in episode 2, The Chestnut. He is accompanying his friend Logan, who is a frequent visitor to the park. There are several hints at a possible second timeline taking place 30 years before the present timeline with the Man in Black. The logo on the wall when William first arrives at Westworld is different than the present-day storyline. What's also interesting is that William and Logan's storyline closely resembles the original plot from the 1973 Westworld movie, where two newcomers fight off the robot uprising. Logan tells William that Westworld is addictive, and when they arrive in Sweetwater, William is more interested in the adventure storylines, similar to the Man in Black, who is obsessed with finding this so-called maze in the middle of Westworld. The Man in Black has a complete disregard for the more conventional storylines, similar to William, while frequent Westworld visitor Logan is more interested in the conventional storylines, i.e. fucking and drinking. Many fans have pointed out that William chooses the white hat when he is given the options for his attire, instead of the black hat, which could represent his original optimistic view of Westworld, and the constant white versus black dichotomy throughout the show. He possibly becomes a more darker, cynical character for undisclosed reasons. Jonathan Nolan, brother of Christopher Nolan and the showrunner for Westworld, was quoted saying, "When you play a role-playing game, one of the first decisions you make is, am I going to go good or bad? Committed gamers will play twice." Another similarity between their arcs is their relationship with Dolores, who seems to be the connective tissue for every character in this show. When William meets Dolores, he picks up the can of food that she drops and introduces himself, while in the pilot episode, the Man in Black has the exact same encounter, except he tells Dolores not tonight, indicating that he has had some type of relationship, possibly sexual, with Dolores. Many people believe that Dolores was raped by the Man in Black at the end of the pilot episode, but I believe the Man in Black was trying to retrieve some past information about their exploits 30 years ago, which supposedly led to the MIB saving Westworld from going under with Arnold's death.
Goddamn. Feels good to be back. Let's celebrate.
The meetings that Bernard and Dr. Ford have with Dolores are most likely happening in the present-day timeline, with Bernard trying to reactivate her consciousness and Dr. Ford trying to suppress it, while also gathering information on her past exploits with the Man in Black. We see the first interaction between Dolores and Dr. Ford in episode 5, where Dolores asks Dr. Ford if they are old friends, to which Ford replies, "No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all." Dolores' supposed relationship with William, the young MIB, may have caused Ford and herself to become enemies in the fight for android consciousness, giving further weight to the separate timeline theory. After Logan convinces William to play the black hat with me, take a trip down the dark side, Dolores, William, and Logan travel to Pariah, an unruly town in Westworld that is described as a raw, more realistic part of the park, where the stories become more complex and the hosts are more inclined to fight back. Logan tells William that Pariah was designed by an engineer who died shortly after its creation, and William points out that whoever created Pariah must have really disliked people. The designer of Pariah is obviously Arnold, who is also the designer of Dolores. Dolores tells Dr. Ford that she hasn't seen Arnold in 34 years, which lines up perfectly with the two-timeline theory, being that Logan discusses the fate of Pariah's creator like it just happened. We also see Dolores murmuring to herself about finding the maze, presumably responding to the voice in her head, which belongs to Arnold. And when her conversation with Dr. Ford is finished, we see Dolores talking to herself saying, "I didn't tell him anything." In the same episode, the Man in Black disposes of his companion Lawrence, using his blood to resurrect an ailing Teddy. And later in the exact same episode, William, Logan, and Dolores agreed to take on a dangerous mission, working for none other than, drumroll, Lawrence, who is now going by the name Eliza. The fact that Lawrence is killed in one scene, then appears fully healthy later in the episode, at this point I don't even think they're trying to hide it. Where this theory begins to fall apart is the ending of episode 4, The Stray, where Dolores finally breaks her loop and murders Trevor from GTA. During the act, she has a nightmarish flashback of the Man in Black, and after breaking her loop, she ends up riding out of town and eventually stumbling into the arms of William. It would not make sense for Dolores to have a flashback of the Man in Black, remembering something from her future. The narrative could be randomly jumping between the different timelines, but it does seem a little careless and could open up a can of continuity problems. This show has so many different theories and questions that it's going to be hard to stick the landing. That's for sure. In the 5th episode, Dr. Ford has his first encounter with the mysterious Man in Black. The Man in Black states that Arnold's death almost took the park with him.
Almost took this place with him. Almost, but not quite. Thanks to me.
Well, maybe he left something behind.
The white versus black dichotomy is prevalent in the meetings, conversations, and actions of Bernard and Dr. Ford, a dynamic that is possibly embodied by the Man in Black, hence his rumored transformation from the white hat to the black hat. It's clear that the Man in Black and Arnold have some sort of connection or past. The Man in Black says that Arnold created a world where you can do anything you want, except one thing: you can't die. Which means no matter how real the world seems, it's still just a game. But then Arnold went and broke his own rule. He died right here in the park. Except I believe he still had one story left to tell. A story with real stakes, real violence. You could say I'm here to honor his legacy. In episode 4, we learn that the Man in Black is somewhat of a celebrity to the outside world. And this could be the reason he is granted a VIP status in Westworld. The theory that he is the individual who may have revolutionized medicine in the futuristic world that Westworld takes place in. Apparently, Logan is William's boss, Logan being the head of a powerful and wealthy company and the brother to William's fiancée. In episode 5, William and Logan almost come to blows after Logan implies that his sister is only marrying him because he is a pushover, who isn't a threat to anyone, especially Logan. If William is in fact the Man in Black, his trip to Westworld could be the beginning of his eventual ascension to the CEO position of this undisclosed company. In the pilot episode, Dr. Ford implies that all illnesses have been cured.
But of course, we've managed to slip evolution's leash now, haven't we? We can cure any disease, keep even the weakest of us alive, and one fine day, perhaps we shall even resurrect the dead, call forth Lazarus from his cave.
In episode 2 of Westworld, head of security Ashley Stubbs also says of the Man in Black, that man gets whatever he wants. And in the 4th episode, a park newcomer tells the Man in Black that his foundation literally saved my sister's life. The Man in Black is obviously rich, having paid top dollar for access to the park for over the last 30 years. So it makes sense that he would be some sort of philanthropist billionaire. who was either an obsessive gamer spending all his money and time inside the park, or a man who is trying to complete the unfinished work of Westworld's co-creator Arnold, which in turn grants him the ability to resurrect the dead, call forth Lazarus from his cave. The Man in Black tells his sidekick Lawrence, whose family was murdered by the Man in Black, you think Batman is hard on Robin, that the maze will be his salvation, implying that the maze will give all of the androids in the park self-consciousness.
Choices, Lawrence. You tell yourself you've been at the mercy of mine because it spares you consideration of your own. Because if you did consider your choices, you'd be confronted with a truth you could not comprehend. That no choice you ever made was your own. You have always been a prisoner. What if I told you I'm here to set you free?
The Man in Black could have several motivations for wanting to find this mysterious maze: competitive drive, a connection or former relationship to Arnold. It's also possible that he is driven by a personal loss, similar to Bernard Lowe. If the MIB is in fact the man who is responsible for curing all of the world's diseases, his motivations could go beyond the quest for immortality, which seems a bit cliche, so I'm going to assume the MIB's true objective is necromancy, specifically for a former wife or lover. When a newcomer approaches the MIB and begins to thank him for saving her sister's life, his response is, "One more word out of you and I'll slit your fucking throat. This is my vacation." His angry response could have been triggered by the memory of a former lover who died in an accident. Remember this photograph from the pilot episode? A young woman standing in front of a 21st century setting, which appears to be Times Square in New York City. It is believed that this photo caused Peter Abernathy, a synthetic android and former father to Dolores, to malfunction. If the Man in Black.William theory is true, this could be the Man in Black's former wife and Logan's sister. Perhaps it was dropped or buried by William 30 years before the current timeline. There isn't enough evidence yet to support this theory, but it seems to me that the MIB's motivations will be personal rather than cynical and malicious. Well, there you have it. There's sure to be dozens of more theories concerning Westworld moving forward, so stay tuned. And stay off Reddit if you don't like spoilers. If you've enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. If you didn't like the video, just subscribe anyway. Come on, man. My next Westworld video will be concerning the character arc of Dolores and the true meaning of Dr. Ford's new secretive narrative. So, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Trump 2016. Trump 2016. Trump 2016. All front Trump Tower looking like the damn football team.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.